Good morning, guys. So I am your teacher for animation, Mr. Samuel Delvisa. Now today we're going to tackle about the introduction of animation. Now I think most of you are now familiar with the introduction of animation because from the modules that I gave you, I have discussed some part of animation, especially its history. Right? So let us start with our topic. What do we need to know? Definition of animation. What are the definitions? Persistence of vision. Types of animation and examples. How to create animation. Storyboard and comparison for comic strips. Use and impact of animation. Now, animation works by using an optical illusion, by presenting a sequence of still image in quick enough succession. The viewer interprets them as a continuous moving image. This is the same principle that enables live action filmmaking and production to work. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with some of the movies, some of the cartoon, some of the animes, which we see cartoons as a moving object. It is an example of animation. And particularly, it is used in all kinds of industries. Now, on this definition, animation is creation of illusion of moving object using a series of still images. Now, it means that it is a layers of picture combined together to form a moving object. Now, use your imagination. Have you seen them? Superman, who's this? I do not know these two cartoon movies. I think Lego, the Lego movie. I do not know if you have watched this kind of movies, but I'm sure if you will watch this, you will be familiar with animation. Now, this type of movies are example of created animation, and to tell you, it is paid a very expensive money. Now, making these animations, these are very expensive because every second, it is composed of at least 12 frames. But I think in the movies, they are composed of at least 35 or 30 frames each second. Now imagine you will be inserting 30 pictures in 1 second. 30 in 1 second. Now, how many frames or how many pictures will it be if we will insert it in a continuous 1 minute or 60 seconds. So we're going to multiply this by 60. 0, 0, 1. Now, we will be having 1,800 frames or pictures in 1 minute. Imagine how hard would it be to create a 1 minute animation composed of 30 frames per second. I do not know if you are familiar with this one, but I'm sure you have seen it, especially when you are playing Dota. Now, on the persistence of vision, it refers to the brain retaining the image of what eyes see even after the image is no longer visible. The brain can only process certain of numbers of images at a time. Brain can recognize images as separate images if they are viewed at 12 or fewer images per second. Now, when we will be creating animation, I think the least FPS or frames per second is 12 because as what I have said earlier, frame per second is the number of frames composed of 1 second. Now, imagine those 12 seconds, if it will be attached together to a continuous motion of picture, it will be turned into animation. And as what said, our brain can only function a certain number of image at a time. So, if, as what I have said on the definition earlier, it is composed of illusion. Now, if our brain saw many frames at a time, it will be an illusion as a moving object. So what this is what animation does to us, right? Now we have the clay emission. Now, this claymation, I have already seen it or I have already saw it since I was a child. Because most of the cartoon characters that I watched is composed of claymation. Now, what is the definition of claymation? When the characters and scenes are made from clay, the term used to describe the animation is claymation. Now, I have here an example of claymation. Now, on the this is an example of comic book. Now, if it is attached together by a software, it will be an example of animation. Another one is the frame per second. Now, I do not know if you are familiar with this frame per seconds or FPS, but I'm going to give you an example of this frame per seconds. Now, what are the differences between 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 frames per seconds? how were cartoons made? Now, I do not know if you are familiar with this cat. Felix the Cat appeared on theaters on 1990. I think it is the first animated cat which is used by Disney. Now I will give an example of Felix the Cat here. And also it was created by Paul Sullivan and Otto Messmer. Now the three types of animation is, first one is, Now the three types of animation are, first is hand-drawn animation. Second one is the motion animation. The third one is the computer animation. Third. Now, from the traditional animation or the classical animations, animation, hand-drawn animation, 2D animation, or just 2D, is an animation technique in which each frame is drawn by hand. The technique was the dominant form of animation in cinema until the advent of computer animation. Now, in this type of animation, it is used before the computer came. Now, what are the animators doing? First of all, they use drawings. I do not know if you are familiar with the flip book drawings, which is composed of hundreds or thousands of drawings to have or to compose a moving object. This is an example. Okay, hand-drawn animation. It is done by artists who draws each character and movement individually. Very time-consuming to have to draw, then color, then photograph each picture. Draw picture first, then color them to celluloid. Then they take pictures and animate them. It is very expensive due to hours of labor involved. Example, the old Disney movies, Bambi, Fox, and the Hound, and Cinderella. I do not know if your generation today you have watched this kind of movies, but on our time, these are the movies or the cartoons that we are watching. The first one is the Bambi, and if you are going to analyze how that movie was created, it is composed of not too many frames per second because of the quality of moving objects given to them. Now, I will give you an example of a clip of these movies because, you know, copyright. By the way, it is very expensive because of the thousands of labors for the drawers. They will draw thousands or hundreds of pictures. Then, they will attach it to make an animation. Now, another one is the stop motion. Stop motion is an animation or animated filmmaking technique in which objects are physically manipulated in small increments between individually and photograph frames so that they will appear to exhibit independent motion or change when the series of frames is played back. Any kind of object can thus be animated. But puppets with movable joints or plasticines figures, clay animation or claymation, are most commonly used. Puppets, models, or clay figures built around an armature are used in model animation. Stop motion with live actors is often referred as pixelation. Stop motion of flat materials such as papers, fabrics, or photographs is usually called cut animation. Now, I do not know if you have watched on the sheet. It is an example of stop motion or animation. Now, this animation is composed of physical objects dominated for them to make an animation. Now, it is not using pure computer. You will use You will use an object manipulated like puppets or any other kind of cutout papers. For you to understand more, I will give an example. Of this stop motion. So stop motion animation, it can be done by virtually anyone. With no extensive training. It does not take that much time relative to the other two methods. Why? Because as what I have said, you will use an object to be manipulated. Number 3, it uses jointed figures or play figures that can be moved to make motions. Now on the things that you are going to use, as what I have watched lately, they are having joints for them to move freely. That joints is composed of the elbows and the toes. They are using these joints for them to animate to a moving object. Take still pictures and individual movements, then use related inexpensive computer software to animate. Now, it is unlike the computer animation which takes time, because you will use a pure computer software, and like this, stop animation, you are going to use an object that you will dominate to make an animation. Now, stop motion animation, most of the animator use movie maker software to complete our animation. Not very expensive, because all you need is a digital camera, and the software comes with the Windows XP operating system. I do not know if we also have this kind of software on Windows 7, 8, 9, 9. Now, the examples of stop motion animations are Star Wars, Robot Chicken, Randolph, the Red Nose Reindeer. Also the Shadow Ship. And also analyze the difference between these three animations for you to understand more about their differences. Now, computer animation. Computer animation is the art of creating moving images via the use of computers. It is a subfield of computer graphics and animation. Increasingly, it is created by the means of 3D computer graphics. Through 2D computer graphics are still widely used for low bandwidth and faster real-time rendering needs. Now, this computer animation is what we're going to do now. Because of our pandemic today, I know most of you do not have laptops or portable computer. So I come to think that we're going to use our cell phones to learn how to animate. Yes, it is somewhat difficult, but let us adjust so that we will know the principle of how to make a computer animation. Now these are the samples of computer animations. Now computer animation, all the characters and movements are generated using computer animation software. It can also be very time consuming as they can get very complicated in movements and effects. All characters are fully animated with no still pictures. No still pictures. Now, in this computer animation, all that you can see is generated through the use of computer which is animated. None of them are drawn, none of them use objects unlike the claymation or the stop motion. It is purely animated and drawn through the use of computer. It can be very expensive because of the complexity of the stunts and animation being done. Yes, because it takes time. As what I have said earlier, it takes time because of the frame per second. Imagine, you will be using at least 40 frames per second to be your animation is that smooth. And it takes huge budget. For example, the Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Matrix, Lord of the Rings. I know that you have watched Toy Story and identify how it was made. Every second of that cartoon, I think it is composed of more than 30, 40, or 50 frames per second because it is having a very smooth frame per second. Now imagine, you will be having at least 30 frames per second in 1 minute. So you will be having 1,800 images in 1 minute. So imagine that complexity of creating an animation through the use of computer. It's very hard. Now let's move to the animation storyboards. A storyboard is a series of sketches that can be used as a guide for filmmaking videos. It contains the action and dialogue of the film. It can also include the music, narration, special effects, information, etc. for the person to guide them in creating a film. Now, these storyboards are often seen on the newspapers, on the comic strips, or the comic section. Now again, Felix the Cat, these are example of comic strips. Now a motion comic or animated comic is a form of animation combined element with a print comic books and animation. Individual panels are expanded into the full shot while sound effects, voice acting, and animation are added to the original artwork. Now a motion comics is an example of comics which is combined, all the parts of the comic is combined together. It is not moving but it has a storyline. It has an audio and added with visual effects. I will give you an example of motion comic.
That son of a bitch.
What? What is it?
Okay, so the ship's manifest lists just 2 of...
Now, the greatest impact of animation today, animation is not just for kids because lately when I was a child, watching cartoons is just for kids. But now, cartoons is also for adults, especially on the rise of animated movies like Star Wars, Planet of the Apes, Lord of the Rings. There. It has been a mainstream in kids, teenager, adults, and seniors. When most teachers today were kids, it was very hard for a parent to be sitting with their child and watching an animated show. As what I said earlier, when we were a child, our parent does not sit beside us to watch cartoons because they think it's just a waste of time and it is only for kids. But now, many of them are seated beside the child and watching 3D animated movies like Star Wars or etc. because they cope with their attention. Now, adults take their kids to the movies and watch them, and there are often inside jokes for adults too. Now, as what I have said earlier, animated movies is $1 million industries. Imagine you will be spending 1 to 20 millions in each movies, and it is just for the animated. It's just for the animated part, and the technicality is not counted. So it is very expensive. Animation and computer graphic effects are used in movies frequently, yes. So animation is used in video games, TV programs, used online simulations, and virtual reality. Now in animation and video games, we use it, all the games that you play, Mobile Legends, Dota, LOL, PUBG, or any other computer or video games, Need for Speed, Battle Rings, and also on the arcade games, they are composed of animation. And all of them are composed of frames per second. The difference is just you can control them. On the TV programs, I do not know if you are watching TV, but on the weather forecast, I have saw it that when they are casting, they have a background of an affected area. For example, there is a low pressure area on that region, so they will have a background and have an animated background of the region which is affected. So that is an example of animation. And also for the TV programs, it is used for advertisement. It is also used online. Another one is from the simulations. I do not know if you are familiar with what do you call this one? The application used by the engineers and the architects to create or to visualize their plan. For example, they are building a house. It is an application for the computer. It is used, they are using it to visualize their plans on their house. It is a 3D application. So I'm going to attach because I forgot what it is called. Also the virtual realities. Now, that is, we're going to tackle about our subject for today. Now, I'm sorry if I'm speaking English because I am used to speaking English, but if some of you are having a hard time understanding our discussion through the English language, our upcoming discussion, I will discuss it in Tagalog for you to understand more. So, by the way, next discussion, we're going to discuss the history of animation, how it is created and how it is formed. So, I think that's all. So, I have said many so. And I think that's it. Good day, guys. Peace.